is Myrna Lewis. I'm an industrial designer. I studied industrial design at Ohio State University. I'm from Austin, Texas, and I now work at a firm in Austin, Texas that helps people create outdoor products.
What first got you interested in industrial design?
I got into industrial design a little bit blind. I didn't really know. I had no idea that it was a career until I was told by my dad, actually, who's a mechanical engineer. He had worked with industrial designers on creating things, and industrial design, more of the artistic skill, human factor side of creating, whereas engineering, a lot of people know already that's the math and science and how do you actually make something work. I was always pretty creative and skilled in the fine arts, but I had no idea that you can make a full career out of that.
What exactly does an industrial designer do?
An industrial designer is a creative problem solver. We tackle problems through design way of thinking. There's design research. A lot of it focuses on hands-on testing, and it also takes human factors into the primary consideration. So that's like, how is someone going to use this? What is the best ergonomics? What is going to sell? The aesthetics of the product that someone's going to see it and want to buy it. So initially, when you're given a problem, for us, the client will come to us with a problem they're trying to solve, or they already have an idea in mind. There's a lot of visual ideating, so that's sketching and kind of talking through different concepts. There's the 3D modeling portion of it, so how you actually get these concepts that are in 2D into 3D. So sometimes that's sketching, sometimes that's woodworking, 3D printing, actually modeling with foam. But the foam part doesn't get used a whole lot anymore. And then there's actually some testing. So the testing with the users can happen at any point in the process. So you can create a sketch or create this visual image that AI is being used in a lot these days, and you can create that and actually take that back to the general public or the user that you're focused on and see how they would react to one of these ideas. And then you could do that with the concept, with a physical model, and with the final product. And there's usually creation, testing, come back, change things, create again, test. So it's very, very visual, very heavy on the visual side of things.
Thank you for sharing those details.
You're welcome.
Thank you for putting that in perspective. Could you give us an example of something you guys create?
So in the past, at the company I worked before, I did a lot more design in the electronic side of things. Sometimes it was enterprise electronics, sometimes it was consumer electronics. At the place I'm at now, because we're so outdoor product focused, I've actually transitioned into a lot of soft goods design. And soft goods design basically means anything fabric. So at the place I'm working now, we make a lot of bags and backpacks, and that's something that I've started to work on. And a lot of people will come with their niche backpack idea and have us develop it. And so there was one project that the client already had their product that they were selling, but they needed a bag to contain it all. So they were selling a set of something, and they wanted a bag that would give you a how do you use this on the go. So a lot of the first part of that was actually getting their product, seeing how people used it, seeing what made the most sense for how do you want to display it. And then once you've figured out the experience, then you can go into how does this look? Are you using a mesh pocket? Are you using what kind of zipper? How fancy do you want this to be? How cheap? A lot of the considerations that go into the final construction. So
Thank you so much for sharing about your backpack, but we were curious, what electronic products require industrial designing?
So one of the ones I was working on before I left that company was a makeup mirror, like a cosmetics mirror. And that was a similar thing where the client we were working with had this product that the idea was there, the concept of they wanted a mirror that could adjust to be any height. So like people are all different heights. So they wanted a mirror that could go from a seated position to a standing position. And so that was the basis of their concept. But if you're not, people come with more or less levels of creativity and knowing the aesthetic vision, and then there's actually how do you make it. So how do you make it and what does it look like? And so that was where they wanted design help. So we sketched out a whole bunch of different ways that this would look, and the actual functionality of how do you make a mirror with a light on it, how do you do the wiring so that you can keep it face level sitting down versus standing up. So that's the electronics part. Depending on how heavy you get into it and how much you need functionality of the systems is where you get more or less engineering help. As usually there's designers will go to a certain point, and then there's a lot of collaboration with engineers. So I think it's a similar process though. There was mirrors, we did some work with Dell too, so on their server racks. And there's a lot of industrial designers in town that do work with Dell on the look and feel of computers because, as you know, there's pretty much one standard laptop design, or one standard laptop format, but a bunch of different designs of what does the actual surface material feel like? What do the keys feel like? Like, there are people that go in and design actually how much does a key click kind of thing. It kind of depends on the experience you're wanting to give. And that can be from problem solving. It can also be like, how do you make this product the best experience?
That really gives us a different perspective on how a lot of things in our life have industrial design as like a factor. So what main factors go into deciding how long a project takes, and what's the average time that a project will take?
I think the main factors that go into how long a project will take is how far along the client or whoever's working on this project is in the problem solving and how much to completion they want us to cover. So that can range. Someone can be like, hey, I have this idea for a new bag or a new cooler. I already make coolers, but I want to make one that's better for this specific user, and it's very vague. And from that, we're working to figure out, what does this new cooler actually have to do? From our side, we're figuring out what problems are there available to solve that not many other coolers in the market solve. Whereas, could this be different in a way that nothing's already doing that? And then, so that takes a lot of communication back and forth from our side to the client side to figure out what they're picturing and what is the best idea. And if someone already has that idea in their mind, if they're already in this field and they've learned a lot about what is needed and what's a problem that could be solved, and they have pretty much the idea set but need help making it, then skips that step. And then on the other side, we can stop at concept creation, so sketches of different ideas that someone could then test with their audience or could bring to an engineering firm, and the engineering firm could help implement. Or a lot of times we end up stopping at prototype creation when you have an actual physical thing that we say this looks good and the client says this looks good, and then can go test or go get that engineered. But so I would say the quickest projects are a couple months. The quickest projects maybe 2 months, but most of them fall around 6 months to a year. And if we're going pretty much full process, that could be 2 to 3 years. So
that's a long time. It's crazy how much dedication you guys have to stick through a project and make sure everything's perfect.
Yeah, a lot of it is the problem solving and then getting feedback and then problem solving again. And I guess it's patience on our side, but also patience and dedication on the client or the business's side too. Are you wanting to get a product ready immediately, or are you wanting to make the best product? And if you have time and money for it, then putting all of that time and effort into a product usually ends up with very cool stuff.
So considering that these projects take quite a while, how do you maintain a proper work-life balance?
That's another good question. Me personally, I pursue hobbies outside of work. So I think part of keeping your brain creative is not working all the time. I think having a balance of stuff you're doing because it's work and stuff you do because you're interested in it. And a lot of times that overlaps, but I think it's very good to have things outside of work that you're excited and interested in. And then timing wise, college and school was different because you can start a project and then put in all of your time until the project's due. And so the work-life balance gets a little unbalanced in college. But once you're in a job that has set hours, and especially after my experience during COVID, I had to limit myself and just stop when the day's over and completely focus to something else. But I think it's very good to have stuff outside of work that you're interested. For me, it's a lot of water sports is something where I can just do and not really think of anything else, and that helps a lot for work, I found.
Speaking about college, what did you major in to become an industrial designer?
So I majored in industrial design. It was a bachelor's of science in industrial design at Ohio State. Had no idea it existed until the summer I was applying for colleges, but there's a lot of schools that will offer industrial design as a major. Different programs do it differently, but where I was at, you apply to the program, and then you have, for the first year, you have foundations courses that take up pretty much the whole year, and then after the first semester, you reapply, and you find out if you made it into the design program that you wanted to, and if not, then you finish the year with a industrial design or with a design minor.
So what type of classes does the industrial design major focus on to help you in your career?
So for us, it was a mixture of skills and also research. At Ohio State, it was pretty research heavy, so you have the design thinking side of things, and then you have also how do you test it? How do you do this iteration process? So our foundation course were very kind of fine visual arts courses, sketching and still life and perspective drawing and stuff like that. And then sophomore, junior, senior, we started with sketching course. So pretty much everyone had some kind of sketching skills, but industrial design sketching is very much focused on how do you communicate these ideas fast and in a way that people can understand them. And so it's kind of figuring out a quick way to do perspective drawings of different things. And then past that, there's 3D modeling. So different places use different softwares for 3D modeling. We used SolidWorks. A lot of places use Fusion now and Rhino. But actually taking your ideas and 3D modeling it on a computer. And then after that, you can create rendering. So there's render software that makes it look realistic. And you can also take the 3D modeled CAD and 3D print it. And then past that is actual design studios, and that's more of the problem solving side of things. So sometimes you're given problems to solve. Sometimes it's group projects. Sometimes it's, hey, at the end of senior year, you're given choose whatever problem you want to solve and go through the whole process.
You said you were interested in fine arts when you were younger. How exactly did that carry over to industrial design?
So a lot of the fine arts interests overlapped with the love of creating and making things. There's also a love of just sketching and creating 2D art as well, but I went through different phases of liking to make different things. So there was a screen printing phase and a beaded jewelry phase and a pottery phase for a little bit, and just hands-on making things. A lot of times that would be the hobby side of things. I would make it and give it away, but it was enough that it was like something I enjoyed doing, and is still to this day something I enjoy doing. Even if it's problem solving focused, it's actually sometimes more rewarding because you start with something that nothing exists to do this, and then at the end, even if it's something exists that helps doing it, it's like you created something that wasn't there before.
So far in your career, what's your favorite thing that you've designed?
Favorite thing? I think it was actually a project I did during an internship. I worked as an intern for a year at GE Appliances in Louisville, Kentucky, and one of our last projects as an intern was to self-lead a project given a very super vague topic, and our topic was food preparation, and we just had to make something that helped in food preparation. And so we had enough time that we created design research and went to talk to a bunch of different families in Louisville, Kentucky, and interviewed them on their just food prep process and if there were ways that they thought the process could be improved, and then use that to make a product. And so from our research, a lot of people didn't like the cleanup side of it. You're having to prep and then you're having to clean. And so we came up with a sink integrated faucet concept. It was like a motion sensing wash and dry station. So as you're prepping food, you can put the plate in and it'll automatically rinse it and dry it, and then you can stick it in the sink or in the dishwasher or whatever. And we actually got a working prototype of that, and we're able to test that with different people at GE and different people in the makerspace associated with GE, and got it painted to look finished and had a sink and a compressor and did some of the engineering ourselves. But that was cool to see that whole process. And now the Dyson sinks, it's a different concept, but it's pretty much what we were trying to do. Is the integrated washing and hand drying exists in a sink now where it didn't before. So
that's such a cool concept and product to be able to come up with and make. So you mentioned earlier that your project, can take as little as 2 months, but even up to 3 years. So how do you communicate to your clients that these projects may take time? And have you ever had any clients who maybe didn't understand that quite as much as you wanted them to?
So I think the best way of just communicating that it'll take longer is to do that, to communicate that it'll take longer, because it's not like you go into a set or to a project knowing exactly how long it'll take. It's kind of like you are just doing different phases of problem solving, and the actual time it takes to get a solution, we can figure that out in the moment, but the amount of times you'll need to change or run into problems it's varied, and it's part of the process. And so we do have clients that want to know what they're getting into, and so we'll usually start projects giving them an estimate of how long it'll take and try to stay to that timeline as much as possible. But sometimes things come up, and it's kind of just balancing expectations of, at the end of this might be 80% of the way there, and you have to figure out once we get there if you want to keep going or just call it, because some people have more budget to keep working on projects, and some people it's very budget tight. So
thank you for helping us understand.
As an industrial designer, what are some challenges that are unique to your profession?
I would say challenges that are unique are, a lot is dependent on software. So there's sometimes you'll want something to work and it just doesn't work, which I guess is not exactly unique to that happens with everything. But I think also sometimes the communication visually, sometimes there's challenges with that, and understanding what people have in their mind and whether it matches with your interpretation. I feel like a lot of this is communication challenges sometimes, and figuring out on a visual level, does what you're seeing and what you're imagining match up with what the other person imagines? And if someone is less confident in sketching, or maybe doesn't use AI in the way that creates things that are possible to create, how do you bridge that gap? And then I think, again, everything is kind of changing with technology, but industrial design and the way it's changing with AI is different than I think a lot of us expected. And in our profession, I think maybe it kind of helps to speed up the process in some ways, but then it also creates roadblocks in other ways.
So speaking of AI, how do you see your career evolving in the next 10 years due to AI, and what are some pros and cons that come with it?
So some of the ways we're seeing it change even right now is that there's, from the client side or other side of it, I think a lot of people are being able to jump to a visual representation of their idea very quickly. You can put something in a chat GPT and have it create an image, and now you have an image of this thing that you want to design. And so a lot of how that translates into us is that ends up being idea implementation more, or also figuring out if what chat created is actually possible. And so I think in that sense it does do some time saving, and there's less of bridging that gap of what do they see visually, what do we see visually, how do we get to that very quickly. But then on the other side, there's still the physical creation and the physical product testing. That's still pretty designer manual at this point. A lot of that still happens on our side, which industrial design as a profession is still very much needed. It's just evolving. So I think in the future, maybe that process also gets automated a little bit, where you can, and it's already happening, you can take an image and make a 3D model, but how it's happening currently, you don't really get a high quality 3D model from it. So I think maybe that process also gets shortened in the future. Maybe the whole process goes from 3 years to 6 months for pretty much every project, but I still think there's a lot of iteration and making something real, and that ends up making better products at the end. And so maybe in the future, when it's the whole process to make something takes 6 months, maybe you're doing that 3 times, and it's still like a longer process to get a better product.
The design process is a really long process and it requires a lot of input. So what other careers do you work with?
I think careers are different professions that we work with. Our clients range from anybody with an idea. A lot of people aren't creatives, but in actually finishing the design process, there's a lot of engineers that we work with. So I guess at different points, it's different people. So there's the engineering side that ends up working to actually make it manufacturable and not break. There's testing, especially into plastic parts, that like the engineering side, how much can you stress test something until it breaks? The mechanical engineering, there's the electrical engineering of how does this hook up to work electronically? Depending on what you're working on, there's other people involved. Let me just cut that part out actually. But on the other side of things, there's graphic designers that'll do the print or the marketing and the logo, and a lot of times that gets involved at different points. There's user experience, user interface designers, which as an industrial designer at a design firm, sometimes you end up doing some of the graphics and UX side of things, but a lot of times that will also get someone else will also help with that process. I'm trying to think of other people, but I think mostly graphic design, UX design, and engineering is who we work with most.
So I understand that there's a lot of other designers and people like that in the place where you work. So for each project, do you divide it based on I take one project, you take another, or do you have different stages of projects that you each work on? Or how does this cooperation sort of work from project to project?
So in design, different consultancies do it different ways, but the one I'm at is very collaborative. So at the beginning of a project, we'll usually all sit down together and do some of the brainstorming together. Sometimes it's like an official meeting. Sometimes it's like, hey, what do you think about this? And that happens a lot through projects, but the projects themselves, we're a pretty small firm too. So usually each person is taking 2 to 3, sometimes 2 to 6 projects and managing them on their own. And then just getting full team feedback where it makes sense. Otherwise, it's pretty one person runs a project.
Thank you so much for answering all of our questions and taking the time to talk to us today. So before we leave, we have one more question. Would you say that industrial design is a career to consider?
I would say industrial design is a career to consider. I think there's a lot of empowerment that comes from being able to design and make something and have your input directly affect what becomes created. So yes, I would.
I think it's so cool how you said empowering. I like to create stuff too, and I can definitely see how creativity can be an empowering force and how it's great to just look at something and be like, wow, I made that.
Nice. That's awesome.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that you also help other people's visions come true. So in that you're also empowering other people as well as yourself. So you're actually helping a lot of people by doing what you do. So thank you for that.
That's a very good way to put it.
Thank you so much for talking to us today. This was very helpful and we learned everything that we wanted to.
Thank you for talking to me. It was great.
Hey guys, we just finished our interview with Myrna Lewis, the industrial designer. Let's share our thoughts. I thought it was really interesting. She mentioned that industrial designers decide things that I don't really think about, such as like how much your computer keys click. So I guess it's just like through the design process, you really think about every little thing along with the overall big picture.
I thought it was really cool like how much you can customize and like how long it takes to do projects. Like projects range from about 2 months to like 3 years, and it's a very like repetitive process. And I think it's cool how much thought really goes into it.
Yeah, like we never knew like how much industrial design can go into electronic products as well. So basically almost a lot of things around you like required industrial design to get here. And I also found really interesting that like the use of AI, it can be like a drawback in industrial design because clients may come with a design that they made on AI that isn't feasible.
And they really have that vision in their head. So
Yeah.
it's like,
But
yeah, and
she
they sort of have to work with their clients to make sure that they understand that I physically cannot create this. So it's sort of trying to help them understand that their vision may be a little bit out of reach sometimes.
But she also mentioned how AI can help. She said that towards the beginning of the process, she spends a lot of time trying to get it rendered into 3D and designing it just right. So she says like sometimes clients come in with an AI version of that, and then all they have to do is just double check to make sure like, okay, is this possible? And already some of the process is done for them.
I think something also to highlight is that it's a very iterative and creative process. It's not something that has a set number of steps and a set process that's like step 1, step 2, step 3. You do it, you get feedback, and then you repeat it. And I think just because it's so creative, no 2 days are ever the same. So if you're somebody that likes a lot of change in your career, this would be a good career for you.
I agree.
I really like how like there's so many factors that go into it. Like you have to check what the client wants. You have to check what like if it'll be a good product. You have to stress test it. You have to use the right software for like 3D design. You have to do all those things, and like how they do it too. It's that stuck with me.
Yeah, I feel like the end goal for people in these professions is trying to make sure that the client in the end sort of gets what they want. Like their vision is what you're trying to bring to life. And in that way, you're actually being beneficial and helping not yourself like feel fulfilled, but your clients as well, because they're getting their vision brought to life, and it's just a different feeling.
it's actually very similar to interior designing. So if you want the same sort of like fulfillment, but you don't want to necessarily design people's houses, and you want to make problems to solutions,
Solutions
to problems, this would be a great career for you.
Yeah, that also comes with the communication challenge she was talking about, right?
Okay, I think
Yeah, okay.
Sivani?
Right.
Anything from you, yeah?
I think I really like this career because it put some like really, I guess, wide.
Casting a wide net, like different types of products.
You know how like a lot of kids like to do a lot of hands-on creative stuff? This is like a perfect, I guess, job for those kids who really love creative aspects.
Yeah, definitely. She also mentioned that like she's involved with like fine arts and creating like 2D art, and that's one of the things that brought her into industrial design. Like the amount of sketching and stuff like that is necessary in this career is also a big part of it. So
Yeah.
Alright guys, I think that's everything. Be sure to check out the video.
And be sure to check out the timestamps and glossary if you have any questions. And yeah.
Adios, amigos.
Wait, also if you have any questions that you would like to ask the industrial designer herself, please let us know in the poll that we are creating.
Adios, amigos.
Bye.